I gave my entire life to one person, my daughter. From the moment she entered this world, a tiny bundle of pink skin and soft cries, I made a silent vow that would shape every sunrise and every aching muscle for the next 4 decades. She would never know hunger. She would never feel the cold bite of poverty. She would never walk barefoot on cracked earth like I did as a boy. That promise wasn't written on paper. It was carved into my bones. I was 28 when she was born, a construction laborer with calloused hands and a back that already creaked from carrying cement bags up 10 flights of stairs. My wife, God rest her soul, died 2 days after the delivery. Complications, they said. I didn't cry at the funeral. I couldn't, because in my arms was this fragile life, and crying felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. From that day forward, every decision I made had one filter. Will this keep her safe? Will this make her smile? I woke up at 3:45 a.m. every single day. The alarm was an old Nokia with a cracked screen that buzzed like an angry bee. I'd slip out of the tiny one-room shack we called home, careful not to wake her. The streets were still dark, the air thick with the smell of coal stoves and wet mud. I'd walk 2 miles to the construction site, boots crunching on gravel, breath fogging in the winter chill. By 5 a.m., I was mixing cement. By 6 a.m., I was hauling bricks. By 7 a.m., my shirt was soaked through with sweat, even in December. Lunch was a roti wrapped in newspaper, sometimes with a smear of chutney if the vendor was kind. I'd sit under the skeleton of a half-built building, legs dangling over a beam 20 floors up, and eat in silence. The other workers talked about cricket or politics. I didn't. My mind was on her. Was she awake? Did the neighbor auntie give her milk? Were her shoes still holding together? I worked 16-hour shifts, sometimes 18. The foreman knew I wouldn't say no to overtime. Ember, he'd call me, because I never complained, never burned out. You're like coal that refuses to turn to ash. I'd smile, wipe the dust from my eyes, and keep lifting. Every rupee went into a tin box hidden under the loose floorboard, labeled in my shaky handwriting, for her future. She was 3 when I bought her first pair of real shoes. Not the rubber slippers that tore in a week, but leather ones with tiny buckles. She squealed when I put them on her feet, ran circles around the room, the soles squeaking on the concrete. I sat on the floor and watched, my own feet bare and blistered, and felt something swell in my chest that wasn't pain. It was pride. It was purpose. By the time she was 5, I'd saved enough to move us out of the slum. A 1-bedroom flat on the 3rd floor of a crumbling building. No elevator, leaky roof. But it had a window. A real window with glass. She pressed her nose to it every morning, watching the world wake up. "Papa, look! The sun's smiling!" I'd laugh, even when my back screamed from carrying her up the stairs the night before. School started at 7. I enrolled her in the best government school I could afford. Uniforms, books, pencils with erasers. I bought them all second-hand, but I scrubbed them clean until they looked new. Every morning, I'd braid her hair, 2 neat plaits with red ribbons, and walk her to the gate. The other kids had mothers in saris. She had me in a faded blue shirt, smelling of cement and sweat. But she never looked ashamed. She'd wave until I was out of sight. I skipped meals so she could eat. Not metaphorically. Literally. Breakfast was her priority. I'd give her the egg, the paratha, the glass of milk. I'd drink black tea and tell her, "Papa's not hungry." She believed me. Kids believe everything when love is the messenger. Dinner was the same. I'd cook dal and rice, give her the bigger portion, and chew slowly so she wouldn't notice I was full after 3 bites. There were nights I came home so tired I couldn't stand. I'd collapse on the floor, fully clothed, boots still on, and she'd crawl onto my chest like a kitten. "Papa, tell me the story about the magic house." I'd made it up years ago. A house with golden walls and a garden where mangoes grew all year.
She'd fall asleep mid-sentence, her breath warm against my neck. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling crack that looked like a lightning bolt, and think, one day I'll build it for her. The years blurred. She grew taller. I grew older. My hands turned into maps of scars and burns. My knees cracked like dry twigs. But the tin box grew heavier. By the time she was 12, I had enough for a plot of land. 20 square meters on the edge of the city. Red soil, no water, no electricity. But it was ours. I paid in cash, counted out in 1,000 rupee notes I'd saved for 8 years. The seller looked at me like I was crazy. "You're building a palace on this dirt?" I smiled. Something better. Construction started the day she turned 13. I didn't hire anyone. Every brick, every bag of cement, every nail, I carried myself. After work, I'd go to the site.
From 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., under a single bulb powered by a stolen extension cord from the neighbor, I mixed cement by hand, laid foundations with a level I made from a wooden plank and a water bottle. My neighbors thought I was mad. "Ember, hire labor!" I'd shake my head. This is love. Love doesn't outsource. She'd visit on weekends, carrying a steel tiffin of rice and curry. We'd sit on the unfinished floor, legs dangling into what would one day be the living room. "Papa, when will it be ready?" I'd point to the sky. "When the stars align." She'd laugh, and I'd believe it was possible. The house took 7 years. 7 years of broken sleep, broken nails, broken dreams that weren't about me. I installed the windows myself. Teak wood I sanded until my fingers bled. I painted the walls a soft yellow, her favorite color. I built a small porch with a swing. I planted a mango sapling in the backyard. Every detail was a love letter written in sweat and silence. The day we moved in, she was 20. College student. Beautiful, smart, kind. She ran from room to room, screaming with joy, "Papa! It's the magic house!" I stood in the doorway, covered in paint, and felt my heart explode. She hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "I love you," she whispered. I believed her. I moved into the small room at the back, gave her the master bedroom with the big window. I cooked, I cleaned, I fixed leaking taps and squeaky doors. I was the shadow that kept the house running. She graduated, got a job, brought friends home. I'd serve them chai and smile from the kitchen. Proud, but invisible. That was fine. Fathers are meant to fade into the background, right? But something shifted. Slowly. Like seasons you don't notice until winter bites. Her hugs grew shorter. Her thank yous turned into nods. She stopped calling me Papa, started calling me Uncle in front of her colleagues. I laughed it off. Kids grow up, I told myself. They need space. Then came the comments. Small at first. "Why do you still fix things? We can hire someone." Then sharper. "You don't need to cook every day. I order in." Then colder. "Can you stay in your room when my friends come?" You embarrass me. I swallowed it all. Because love, I thought, means enduring. Because fathers, I thought, are built to absorb pain. Because the house, the magic house, was hers now. I'd signed it over the day she got her first paycheck. "It's yours," I said. "I'm just the caretaker." But caretakers, I learned, are disposable. The tin box was empty now. My savings gone, my body failing. Arthritis in my fingers, cataracts in my eyes. I still woke up at 4 a.m., out of habit, and made her coffee. Black, 2 sugars. She'd take it without looking up from her phone. "Thanks," she'd mutter. I'd retreat to my room, close the door, and sit in the dark. I told myself it was temporary, that one day she'd remember the nights I carried her up the stairs, the shoes, the yellow walls, the mango tree that finally bore fruit last summer. That one day she'd see me again, but that day never came. Instead, she slapped me, in front of the neighbors. And in that moment, everything I built, every brick, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, crumbled into dust. The house was never just a structure. It was a living, breathing testament to every drop of blood I'd spilled on construction sites for 27 years. I named it nothing. She called it home the first time she stepped inside, and that word lodged in my chest like a bullet I never wanted removed. 20 square meters of red soil had become 4 rooms, a kitchen, a porch, and a backyard with a mango sapling that now stood taller than me. Every inch of it carried my fingerprints, my DNA, my soul. I remembered the day the foundation was poured. July 12th, 2009, her 13th birthday. I'd saved for 3 months to buy the cement in one go, no installments, no loans. The truck arrived at 6 a.m. I stood barefoot in the mud, directing the driver with a bamboo stick like a conductor leading an orchestra. The workers, 4 men I'd hired for the day only, poured the slurry while I knelt in it, leveling with my palms. The sun beat down. My shirt turned white with cement dust. She watched from the roadside, clutching a steel tiffin with birthday cake inside. When the slab was done, I wrote her name in the wet concrete with my finger. Arohi. The letters dried crooked, but they stayed. They're still there, under the living room tiles. The walls went up, brick by brick. I worked nights after my day job. From 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., under a 100-watt bulb strung from a neem tree. Mosquitoes feasted on my arms. I didn't swat. Every slap would have cost me a second, and seconds were bricks. I laid 4,312 bricks with my own hands. I counted them. Each one cost me 2.5 rupees and 1 blister. I mixed the mortar in a rusted drum, the ratio perfect. 1-4 cement to sand, because I'd learned from the best engineers on the sites I labored for. They taught me for free because I carried their tools without complaint. The roof was the hardest. Corrugated asbestos sheets, heavy, sharp. I hauled them up a bamboo ladder balanced on 2 oil drums. One slip and I'd have been paralyzed. I didn't slip. I tied a rope around my waist, the other end knotted to the neem tree. If I fell, the tree would catch me. It didn't need to. I installed 22 sheets in 4 nights. The last one went up on Diwali. Firecrackers lit the sky while I hammered the final nail. She ran out in her new frock, barefoot, and danced under the completed roof. "Papa, it's a real house!" I sat on the edge, legs dangling, and cried silently so she wouldn't see. The doors were teak, salvage from a demolished mansion in the rich colony. The owner was throwing them out. I paid the watchman 500 rupees to look away while I loaded them onto a cycle rickshaw at midnight. I sanded them for a week. My fingers bled. The grain was beautiful, dark swirls like tiger stripes. I fitted them myself. No hinges from the market. I made them from scrap iron, heated in a coal forge behind the slum. The latch clicked like a heartbeat the first time I closed the front door. She was asleep inside. I stood outside for an hour, hand on the wood, listening to her breathe through the gap. Windows were next. 6 of them. I bought the glass secondhand from a glazier who owed me a favor. Each pane was scratched, but I polished them with newspaper and vinegar until they sparkled. I built the frames from salwood I'd saved from a demolished school desk. The shutters opened outward, painted yellow. Her favorite color since she was 4. I installed a latch on the inside of her bedroom window so she could lock it when she studied late. She never used it, but I checked every night anyway. The kitchen was her kingdom. I tiled the counter with broken marble pieces, leftovers from a 5-star hotel renovation. I arranged them into a mosaic of a sunflower. It took 3 months. My knees screamed. I cooked the first meal on a second-hand gas stove. Dal, rice, and aloo gobi. She ate cross-legged on the floor because we had no table yet. "Papa, it tastes like magic." I smiled and gave her my portion too. I wasn't hungry. I was full of her happiness. The bathroom was tiny but perfect. I laid the floor with white tiles I'd carried home one by one in my lunch bag. The commode was second-hand, but I scrubbed it with acid until it gleamed. I installed a shower head I'd salvaged from a construction site toilet. It leaked at first.
I fixed it with rubber from an old cycle tube. The first time she showered, she sang. Her voice echoed off the tiles like a temple bell.
I stood outside the door, pretending to fix the latch, but really just listening. Fathers live for those moments. The porch was my gift to her future. I built a swing from teak offcuts and chain I'd saved from a demolished factory. I hung it from a beam I'd reinforced with iron rods. She could sit there and study or dream or just watch the world. I planted jasmine along the railing. Within a year, it climbed the walls and filled the nights with sweetness. I installed a bulb above the swing, soft yellow, not harsh white, so she could read without straining her eyes. She did. Every evening. I'd watch from the kitchen window, chopping onions. Tears in my eyes that weren't from the onions. The backyard was for the mango tree. I dug the pit myself, 2 feet deep. Filled it with cow dung, coconut coir, and eggshells I'd saved for months.
The sapling was a gift from a site engineer whose daughter had the same name. I watered it every day for 3 years before it bore fruit. The first mango was small, sour. She ate it anyway and said it was the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. I believed her. Inside, every room had a story. The living room had a false ceiling I'd made from gypsum boards I'd carried home on my head. I painted it sky blue with clouds I stenciled using a toothbrush. The bedroom had a built-in wardrobe I'd crafted from plywood scraps. I lined the shelves with old calendars so her clothes wouldn't smell of wood. The study, her study, had a desk I'd built from a door I'd found in the trash. I planed it smooth, varnished it, and carved her initials on the corner. A.E. She never noticed, but I did, every time I dusted it. The electricals were my masterpiece. I wired the entire house myself, learned from YouTube on a borrowed phone. I installed concealed wiring, MCBS, earthing. The electrician who checked it later said, "Who did this?" IIT graduate? I smiled and said nothing. The fans were secondhand, but balanced perfectly. The lights were LED, expensive, but I'd saved for 6 months. I installed a switch near her bed so she could turn off the world when she wanted to sleep. She never used it, but I checked it every night anyway. The painting took 2 months. I did it at night after she slept. Yellow for the walls, white for the ceilings, green for the doors. I used a roller I'd made from a paint tin and sponge. My arms ached for weeks. But when she woke up to the fresh colors, she screamed, "Papa! It's Narnia!" I laughed until my ribs hurt. I hadn't laughed like that since her mother died. The flooring was vinyl, cheap but durable. I laid it myself, cutting each piece with a blade I'd sharpened on a stone. The seams were perfect. No bubbles, no gaps. I sealed them with glue I'd mixed with sawdust to save money. The house smelled of newness for weeks. She'd walk barefoot and say, "It's like walking on clouds." I'd nod, hiding the fact that my own feet were cracked and bleeding from the construction. The final touch was the nameplate. I carved it from teak. Arohi and Papa. I hung it above the door with screws I'd saved from a demolished bridge. The letters were uneven, but they were mine. She hugged me when she saw it. "We're a team," she said. I believed her. I moved into the servants' quarter at the back. 10 by 10. A cot, a steel almirah, a tiny window that looked into the mango tree. I gave her the master bedroom with the attached bath. I cooked on a 2-burner stove in the common kitchen. I cleaned. I washed, I fixed. I was the ghost that kept the house alive. She was the queen. That was the deal. For years it worked. She'd come home from college, kick off her shoes, and collapse on the swing. I'd bring her cold coffee in a steel tumbler. She'd tell me about her day, professors, friends, dreams. I'd listen, nodding, chopping vegetables in the background. Sometimes she'd fall asleep on the swing. I'd carry her to bed, her head lolling on my shoulder like when she was 5.
I'd tuck her in, turn off the light, and sit outside her door until her breathing evened. Then I'd go to my room, lie on the cot, and stare at the ceiling until dawn. But queens grow up, and ghosts fade. The first sign was the shoes. She stopped leaving them at the door for me to polish. Then the coffee. She started making it herself. Then the stories. She stopped telling them. Then the swing. She stopped using it. Then the nameplate. She asked me to remove "and Papa." "It looks childish," she said. I did, without a word. Disrespect doesn't arrive with trumpets. It creeps in on slippers, soft-soled and silent, until one day you realize the floorboards are rotting beneath your feet. For me, it started with a sigh. One single exhale that lasted half a second too long. I was in the kitchen at 6:12 a.m., stirring dal on the same stove I'd installed 15 years earlier. She walked in, hair tousled from sleep, phone glowing in her palm. I smiled. Small. Automatic. The way a machine smiles when you press the right button. "Coffee's ready," I said. She didn't look up, just reached past me, grabbed the mug, and sighed. Not a tired sigh. Not a morning sigh. A "why are you still here" sigh. The sound scraped the inside of my skull like a dull blade. I kept stirring. The dal bubbled. She left. The mug stayed half empty on the counter. I washed it. I always washed it. That was day 1. Day 30 came disguised as a Tuesday. I was fixing the kitchen tap. Again. The washer had worn out. I'd replaced it 6 times in 2 years. I was on my knees, wrench in hand, water dripping onto the mosaic sunflower I'd laid brick by brick. She walked in with a colleague. Young man. Expensive shoes. Laughing about some office meme. I looked up, grease on my fingers, and said, "Morning, Beta." She didn't introduce me. Didn't even glance down. Just stepped over the puddle, over me, and said to him, "Ignore the noise. The plumber's slow today." The man laughed. I laughed too, inside my head. A dry, cracked sound. I tightened the nut. The tap stopped leaking. They left. I stayed on the floor until the tiles went cold. Day 90 was a Sunday.
I'd made aloo paranta, her favorite since she was 7. I'd woken at 4 a.m. to knead the dough, grate the potatoes, roast the spices exactly the way her mother used to. I set the table with the good plates, cloth napkins, a small vase with jasmine from the porch. She came down at 10:47 a.m., still in pajamas, phone in one hand, AirPods in her ears. "Breakfast?" I asked. She pulled out one pod. I ordered avocado toast. The delivery boy rang the bell. She signed, took the paper bag, sat on the swing I'd rebuilt last monsoon, and ate in silence while scrolling. The paratas cooled. The jasmine wilted. I wrapped the leftovers in foil and put them in the fridge, labeled Arohi, heat 2 minutes. Day 180 arrived with rain. The roof leaked, again. A tiny drip in the corner of the living room, right above the cloud I'd stenciled on the false ceiling.
I was up on the ladder at 11 p.m., torch between my teeth, patching with cement I'd mixed in an old paint bucket. She walked in, umbrella dripping, heels clicking. "What are you doing?" "Fixing the leak." She rolled her eyes. "Call a professional. You'll ruin the paint." I climbed down. My knees popped. "I am the professional." She laughed, not kindly. "You're 65. Retire already." I looked at the patch. It was perfect. I looked at her. She was already walking away. Day 365 was her birthday. 27. I'd saved for 6 months to buy her a gold necklace. Thin chain, tiny pendant, shaped like a mango leaf. I wrapped it in newspaper because I couldn't afford gift paper. I cooked her favorite, butter chicken, jeera rice, gulab jamun. I set the table at 7 p.m. sharp, lit a candle, waited. She came home at 11:43 p.m., drunk, giggling with 2 friends. They stumbled in, kicked off their shoes in the hallway, right on the vinyl I'd laid seam by seam. One of them stepped on the pendant box. Crushed it. "Oops," she said. Didn't bend to pick it up. I did. The chain was bent, The leaf snapped. I held it in my palm like a dead bird. "Happy birthday, Betha." She waved a hand. We ate out. Some Michelin star place. You wouldn't get it. They went to her room, closed the door. Music thumped. I blew out the candle, ate cold butter chicken alone at the table. The foil from last year's parathas was still in the fridge. The poison kept dripping. She stopped saying thank you, stopped saying good morning, stopped saying anything at all. I became a ghost with a pulse. I'd pass her in the hallway. She'd look through me like I was made of smoke. I'd leave her lunch on the table, labeled, always labeled. She'd toss it in the bin uneaten. I found the gold necklace in the trash 3 weeks later. Still bent. I fished it out, cleaned it, hung it on the mango tree. The leaf glinted in the sun like a tear. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Sharma from next door stopped me at the gate. "Ember G, everything okay? Arohi looks different." I smiled. "Kids grow up." She patted my arm. "You built her a palace. Don't let her forget." I nodded. But palaces crumble when the foundation is ignored. One afternoon it happened. The sofa. I said, "Move it left. Better light." She snapped. "You always interfere!" Neighbors watched. Phones came out. Then, her hand. Open-palmed. Full force. My cheek burned. She laughed. "Happy now?" I stood frozen. Heart shattered. That night I pulled the papers. Title still in my name. I called the lawyer at midnight. Sell it. 3 days. 1.5 crore. Cash.
I forged her signature on a fake rent agreement. She signed without reading. Deal closed. Money in my account. She came home. Saw the sold sign. Screamed. Cried. Begged. I handed her the papers. I sold the house. It was mine. She lunged. Neighbors watched. I said, "You slapped my face. I sold your future. We're even." I bought a one-way ticket. Thailand. 50 missed calls. 1 text. "You hit me. I took your home. Done. SIM in the trash. Boarded the plane. Free. Now I live in a condo by the sea. 68. Healthy. Peaceful." She messaged 2 years later. "Dad, I'm sorry." No reply. Some doors close forever. This isn't revenge. It's respect reclaimed. This is the voice of Ember, signing off the final flame. If this story scorched your soul, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and let the ember burn brighter. Comment your truth. Would you have sold the house? Share, reflect, ignite. The voice of Ember never fades.